Welcome back to another StarCraft 2 replay cast. Today we're going to be looking at a game that was part of a Clan Wars series, in which a Grandmaster League Terran player will face off versus a Master League Zerg player. Let's go ahead and introduce our players now. Spawning down on the bottom right side, our underdog from the Master League, in a healthy shade of blue. Our Zerg player representing IMI is Risk. And spawning down on the bottom left side of our map, in yellow, because this is a Clan Wars game, we have our Grandmaster League Terran player representing Confed, it's Guile. Now, before I speak too specifically about what either of our players are doing, I want to talk about the map. This is Nimbus Ladder Edition. For those of you who are not familiar, this is a 4-player spawn map, so at the moment you can see on the mini-map that Risk is sending his overlords all around the map, looking for his opponent. Other notable features of the map are this very narrow entrance into our main base, right next to this pile of destructible debris. This debris can easily allow you to wall off your main base completely, keeping you pretty safe, and then later you can destroy this debris to move your units out to your 3rd, to attack, to your 4th, whatever you want from your main base. Alternately, if you aren't paying attention, a very aggressive player in the early game can destroy this debris, nullifying your wall off and march a whole bunch of units into your base. So definitely a spot to keep track of on this map. In addition, both of our players have this high ground in-base natural expansion. You can see it can be accessed from the main base via a fairly wide ramp. And it's up here. It's actually pretty secure in the early game because, as mentioned, the only way to access it is from the main base, and let's face it, the main base is sort of hard to access, so it's pretty safe early on. However, as the game progresses, it's quite vulnerable to air. Look at all this airspace around both of our players' natural expansions. You can see that both players have their expansions pretty well up and running at this point. However, they're definitely going to want to keep track of things like drops or Mutalisk Harass, or really anything flying as the game continues. Now, as far as what our players are doing, we have a fairly standard looking wall off here from Guile. Guile hasn't really done any scouting at this point. He's just going to go ahead and make a couple Marines, start his factory off, and get his tech up and running. Over here in our Zerg base, we have Zergling Speed coming on up. We also have a single drone mining from this extractor at this point. Now, Risk is going to want to make sure that he has enough gas to continue to tech as the game progresses. However, it looks like he's going to go ahead and power out drones and just enough Zerglings to make sure that he's safe in the future and can scout. Now, this is going to mean that he could well stay on Zerglings for a good long time and then transition into Mutalisk, which I have to say wouldn't be a bad choice for this map given how mobile that combination is and how much of an advantage you could have, say, expanding northward, having a very mobile army, and just generally being faster than your opponent and doing a bunch of harassment with all of these cliffs all over this map. Now, at the moment, we have a couple of Hellions scouting out and about for Guile. Guile has gone ahead and added a little reactor here to his factory. Looks like he did switch that out with his original barracks. His original barracks is currently going to go ahead and continue to train Marines. However, that's going to go ahead and research Stim for him as well, which is quite an important upgrade if you are a Terran player. Looks like we are going to move this initial factory over and build a brand spanking new reactor onto that puppy so that we can add a new barracks with a new reactor over here, or rather our old reactor, so we can produce Marines at the speed of light. At the moment, we have a series of Hellions moving out of the base, Hellions being quite good at controlling space around the time our Zerg player is taking a 3rd, which of course Risk is right now. He's able to go ahead and defend his main base with Queens pretty easily, and these choke points are not terribly huge to defend the 3rd. However, our 3rd is by far our most vulnerable base thus far. We do have several speed Zerglings out on the field so that we can continue to defend this 3rd base, and we have Hellions sort of jockeying for position out here, sort of waiting for an optimal moment to move in and strike, and just generally trying to keep Risk pinned back so that he can't move out and be too troublesome. We are going to see a pretty good surround here, and the Hellions just die. Risk takes a good deal of damage to these Zerglings, but not too many of them are killed off. In fact, in the unit's loss tab, which I'll switch over to right now, we have 250 resources lost for our Zerg player and 600 lost for our Terran player. So overall, we're just beginning to edge out our Terran player right here at the start of the game, which is where you want to be. However, those Hellions have certainly forced our Zerg player to build a decent number of speed Zerglings. And in the meantime, Guile has expanded and begun taking his own third base. He's also gone about the process of securing said base by building a bunker over here, which is just about done. He has a handful of Marines, he has a nice Widow Mine here, and he's generally not in a terrible position defensively. This area is pretty wide open, but I imagine he's going to take additional measures to make sure that this base is pretty safe as we continue along in the game. We do have additional Widow Mines on the field, which of course are very scary in that they're kind of a wild card in our game. Sometimes you get good Widow Mine hits in a game, and sometimes you don't. So we'll see what that winds up being. However, in our Zerg base, Risk has set up a whole bunch of gas geysers, and it looks like he's building his spire. It's just about to complete. It's gonna be Mutalisk. So many Mutalisk, 5 queued up right away. We have a macro hatch going down here in the main, which I highly advise all of you lower league Zerg players to go ahead and add to your repertoire, because it does help you spend those injects from your queen. So it's quite a nice thing to have. We have a couple of Evo chambers here. Looks like we're going to go ahead and get the melee attack level 2 right now. And we have a 4th base coming on down for Risk. Now, of course, expanding northward could be very good for him, not only because he has proactively set up these very nice overlords for spotting, but also because his army is so mobile, and he's expanding away from his opponent, which should allow him to defend them pretty readily, or at least open Guile up to counterattacks if he chooses to do some harassment. Over here we have a few speed Zerglings, making sure that he can spot any 4th base for Guile. However, Guile is moving out across the map. Decent number of Widow Mines. It looks like he's going to spread those about, which is quite a good plan. And Guile's going to kill off some of this creep, which is always very important to Terran players. However, this does pretty well alert Zerg that there is something going on over here. Now it looks like we do have a bit of a counterattack. Several speed Zerglings running around near this sort of 3rd base. We also have some Mutalisks darting in and out. And this is exactly what I mean. And I'm surprised we didn't have more Widow Mines going off there. We do have several. However, we do have the Zerg army rolling on in. Several Banelings have been produced. And it looks like this didn't go terribly for Zerg, and it didn't go terribly for Terran. We have our Zerg player retreating with Mutalisk because he does not want to engage those Marines directly. We have several Widow Mines who had a few good shots. This one got 12 kills, so he is a Sergeant Widow Mine. This one is also a Sergeant with 11 kills, and then we have some newbie Widow Mines. Creep spread is continuing to be killed off. Here we have our Zerg player restraining himself, making sure that he realizes that keeping his army alive is more important than dealing with this having creep spread killed off problem. However, he does eventually move units forward and successfully defends his bases. We have a bit of additional engagements going on. However, both players are going to need to regroup for the moment. In the unit's loss tab, I want to go ahead and note that our Zerg player has now hopped on ahead, which is not a race that you want to be winning. However, he has successfully defended this 4th base. He's going to be able to continue to produce drones for said base. You can see him making 2 there. He's still going to produce additional Zerglings because certainly the threat is not over, and he has a large number of Banelings to deal with the fact that this is a mostly bio army with Widow Mines, and Banelings are not terrible versus Widow Mines as long as they get some early shots off and get some splash damage. We still have watchful Zerglings over here. We have a few Mutalisks darting in and out, trying to get some stuff done, but definitely want to be careful with those expensive gas-heavy units. Over here we have some drones coming up to populate this base. And here we have our Terran player moving about, clearing out most of the Zerglings except for this one clever Zergling here, who's actually going to block any landing building from getting there until our Terran player can scan and kill off the single Zergling. Looks like we do have an additional command center building for Guile, so he certainly is thinking about expanding again. And here we're going to have another engagement. A few Widow Mines brewing. Want to be careful with those Mutalisks. Definitely don't want to lose a whole bunch of them to those stimmed Marines if possible. We have a couple of burrowed banelings here. Oh, it's going to be so great if we have some burrowed baneling hits. However, over here we have a bit of counterattacking, and this is exactly what I mean. Guile is open to this sort of counterattacking because of the mobility of this army whenever he decides to move out. You can see him sort of pulling units back and then heading in with a few here. This base is not in a great position because there are several Marines firing upon it. However, because of our mobile Zerg army, we're able to run several Zerglings over here and deal with it. In the meantime, several depots have been killed off. Looks like we do have a Widow Mine with 8 kills, so he is a corporal. And we're going to go ahead and have to rebuild said depots. This one definitely needs a repair so that it doesn't burn down. And here we have a large number of Widow Mines burrowing on along. However, we do have burrowed banelings here. I don't want anyone to discount those. I'm hoping that we get to see some burrowed baneling action, because I certainly have liked watching games with Scarlet and the like. However, that certainly is a luck thing. We do have more Widow Mines, some dropship medevacs, and several Marines coming on in. I believe the Widow Mines actually did more damage to their own army than they did to the Zerg army. Banelings pour on in, Zerglings helping out with the additional damage. Here we have lots of those Widow Mines being cleaned up by the Banelings. Lots more Zerg army moving on in. We have our growing Mutalisk threat coming on in to destroy the additional medevacs in the air. And here we have this base with the one Zergling here, which I'm certain is detected by this missile turret. However, it's currently unable to land, and Risk takes advantage of this. He certainly knows exactly what's going on because his Zergling is there. And he's going to go ahead and attack this command center while it is defenseless. However, it has been somewhat defended, as we have Marines heading on in to make sure that this base does not get taken out. We still have that one clever Zergling there, however he's no longer detected. Looks like we do have a scan. Marines move in and finally do kill that one poor Zergling. Looks like we do have a drone heading on up, and could it be? Yes, another northward expansion. Our Zerg player continues to rack up bases. Guile has been extremely delayed in setting up this base. If we look at the income, we can see that there's a few mineral patches here in the natural. The main's pretty well mined out. There's a few mineral patches here. However, his largest source of income is going to be this new base. Many a mule is dropped. Lots and lots of missile turrets go down. And I don't blame him, because that's exactly how I react to Mutalisk Harass. We do have our Zerg player moving northward with lots of Zerglings and lots of Mutalisks headed for, potentially, this base right here. Here we see the Mutalisks swooping around. Lots of Zerglings running in. Gotta be very careful. Doesn't want to lose too many Mutalisks here. However, we do have the base killed off. We have several Zerglings dying, but by and large, I think that was probably a good move for Risk, because he's really keeping the economic advantage up on this Grandmaster Terran player. Looks like a new SCV has been commanded to build a new base here. And here we have our Zerg player swooping on in into the natural expansion with all the airspace. Could it be? Yes, it could. And in fact, the one turret dies. We have dead SCV bits flying everywhere. I want to go ahead and take a look at the army and worker supply. Right now, the worker supply is plummeting for Guile, down to 50, 49, 48, dropping and dropping. We still have 79 workers for Risk. We do have a decent number of Guile's units over near that same position where we have engagements. However, this base is just gone. One command center down, lots of SCVs down. Looks like we're going to go ahead and have Guile moving on in to the fourth base for Risk. However, Risk is going to continue to attack with his Mutalisk over here at this large income-having base. Lots of the SCVs are here. Could result in mass losses. Looks like we do have a defense in the form of Zerglings and Banelings rolling on in. We do lose that 4th base, however we have this nice 5th base up here, mining already with just a few drones. It will take drones a while to get up to that base, but by and large, a good investment. Here we have this base being slowly killed off. I don't think there are enough Marines here to really deal with the Mutalisk just yet. We do have additional units coming on in for both players to this base. This has become a hotspot. There are a lot of Zerglings here. I believe we will see this base get taken out. And indeed we do. We have a few medevacs retreating across the field. We have another secret burrowed Baneling here, just in case. Additional Zerglings and Mutalisks retreating from the main base, which is quite well defended. However, there's no command center here. There's one mineral patch. There's one command center here, which is moving gradually away, since there isn't too much to mine there anyway. And this army is really banking on getting that expansion up and running with the one remaining command center our Terran player has in the game. At this point, it's going to take a miracle for Guile to pull this back. However, he is a Grandmaster player. I've seen miracles happen in all of those tournaments, so we will see if something winds up happening here. For the moment, we have some long-distance mining for Risk. These spine crawlers are going to slowly take damage as the creep recedes from this area. So moving this creep tumor over, or just repairing and building a new hatch right here would be quite a good thing. Looks like we have a bit of interaction between our armies going on. However, the interaction is largely one-sided. We see Banelings really popping up and being scary and killing off Marines. We see Mutalisks heading across the field. Likely we'll be able to chase down these medevacs, perhaps not, but we have Zerglings scouting out this base. This is the do-or-die moment. Right now we have SCVs running. A single Baneling hit kills most of them. We have the GG. Risk fist pumps and remains in the game to go ahead and watch his Mutalisk kill off the single remaining command center. I want to go ahead and look at the worker supply. It is 1 to 71, which is massive as far as differences. We're going to go ahead and watch this command center burn with our friend Risk, and watch his Mutalisk fly to the rest of his army before he leaves the game. Thank you so much for watching, you guys. Thank you, Risk, for sending me this game. If you enjoyed my cast and would like to see me cast one of your games, go ahead and send it to NoobCrafted@gmail.com. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I had fun casting. I hope you enjoyed watching, and I'll see you on the ladder.